Hello, I'm Richard Raffan. If you want to take the tenon off the bottom of a bowl or adjust the foot, there are several ways of doing that without spending a lot of money on a set of bowl jaws or coal jaws or a Longworth chuck. You can do it with scrap material or roughed out bowls, and that's what you're going to see in this video. This small bowl is not flat on the bottom, hump in the middle, so I want to remove that. So I obviously can't bring up the tail center, and so you pop that into a chuck. Now this is a piece of MDF which has already been used to hold a bowl, and that goes onto the chuck, and then I want to fit that into there. Well, that almost fits, not quite. No, it just needs to have a teeny bit more taken out. Now to do that, I'm going to use the skew bevel. Got to be very careful not to dovetail this, because if you dovetail it, the bowl might go in and be very difficult to get out. I just want to screw that up. Because then what I want is a little crunching sound, which is the bowl just getting a bit tighter. Okay, so that's in. And to take the bottom off, I would probably then normally use a 3/8 spindle gouge. Or I could use a shear scraper when I find it. The gouge is safer because you've got the bevel riding against the wood, and that if the bowl does come loose, at least you can keep it in the chuck, whereas with this it'll just try to vault out. So that's actually done now, and I can sand that, and that's that. Now if I want to remove the foot or do anything to the foot, I can do that at this stage as well. I'll just emphasize this foot because I might yet sand this bowl on the inside. And so that's that. Now the problem becomes, how do you get the thing out? And you can just take it off the chuck. Oops, the whole thing came off. The chuck wasn't that well on the screw, right? And right, to get that out, just tap the bowl, and there you are. Very simple, very inexpensive. All you need is a screw chuck. I haven't got a commercial screw chuck. Very easy to make your own. There's a video on this one being made in the tools section of my videos. It's a old style number 14 wood screw. This is a bit of old furniture, offcut for a bit of recycled furniture, and so that will go onto there. And I'm going to rechuck this bowl. So I don't need to do anything to this bowl, but it's just happens to be handy. And so to measure this, you get some dividers. Hold one side, then you can watch the other. Right, the mark you make with the left needs to line up with the point on the right, so begin about there. Now the idea here is to cut in at a very slight angle. You want the hole tapering very slightly. I don't need to take out a huge amount, so just enough to hold the bowl. This is when you can practice your entry cuts. So this is a 3/8 spindle guide. Doesn't quite go. Just sweep that across, create a bit of space. This is a thin wall bowl, it's only about 1/8 of an inch thick, so and that goes into there. Right, and then you can do whatever you like to the outside. Now, if you don't trust that as a method of holding, then you can bring up the tail center with a block. So this is a little piece of MDF with a hole in the middle which will fit over the cone. So that's a comparatively large bit. I've got a little smaller bit here, a little square which is yet to be turned round, but that will do the job. Now to get that out, it's not going to come out that easily. It did, fortunately, but if you're stuck right in there, you can just get something large and heavy and just tap the top. Now, I often use roughed out bowls or bowls which have had a defect in them. I think this one had a split, and there are a couple of wormholes there. But I can use a roughed out bowl as a chuck, so this is going into step jaws, into the middle jaw. That will fit just inside that hole. So this time again, this is when I like to practice my entry cuts here. Tools on its side, and then it's going in very slightly. Right, I've gone a bit, well, it's not so much too far, but the angle here on the side is quite steep. So I might be able to pop it in and it grips very quickly, but it'll also ungrip very quickly. So I want to make this a shallower angle, and I can do that with the skew. Chisel on its side using it like a negative rake scraper. I shallow that angle a bit. And if I can get this rim up against that shoulder, it'll just be a better grip. And still a little bit steep, a little bit too much in that way. Now I need a little mallet. Or even a bigger mallet. It's just a question of tightening, knocking the high bit so it gets in. Right, and again, that's in securely enough that if I want to take the bottom off, I can. I've already done this one, so I really don't want to take off any more in that one, but hopefully you're beginning to get the idea. Now to get this out, I'll just hit it with something heavy. So now this has a ridge on the inside, which means that another way of approaching chucking is to put the bowl essentially between centres. So that's on there. Now if I want to remount this so I can sand the outside or something like that, then I need to round this off. This is the 1/2 inch spindle gouge. This is a 3/8 flute. Let's round that over. And I'm going to put another little shoulder up there so that I can grip it in a chuck. That round will fit nicely in there. This is done with a tail centre, and so I just need a bit of non-slip cloth which will protect the whole thing. Get it fairly tight, and then you can pull this around. You can eyeball it so it's running true, and then again, if you want to do a foot, you get in with something like a 3/8 spindle gouge and do whatever you want to down on the foot. If I want to do anything up the side, I can. Another way of getting at the at this foot to detail it is to use a flat disc. Now this one's going, this could easily go onto a screw chuck if you had a hole in the middle. This one's going onto the shark jaws on this it's a VM100 chuck, and so that is almost the right size for, it's almost the same size rather as the chuck. I've got a teeny little bit of MDF here, which you'll probably, those of you who watched a number of my videos will have seen this block in use quite often. And then I just tweak that over until I can see the block running, or the base running pretty well true. Watch it on the far side and then pull it over. It's sliding a little bit too easily. Just tighten up the tailstock fraction and ease it in. With practice you really get quite good at this, and I'm out of practice at the moment. In the days before the modern chucks came along, this was how we finished the bottoms of bowls. It goes in, and then you come with your tool, with your gouge. And if you don't have one of these, you can just expand the jaws a bit, get a wodge of cloth over it, although the non-slip is preferable. A couple of layers of that. All goes over. Bring up your little bit of MDF. The same thing. It's a little spongier. A block is definitely easier. Half my problem is the tailstock wasn't tightened up. That was half the problem. The other half was my eye not being particularly good today. Right, that's going to be near enough. And then you do what you need to do. The slight run out here really doesn't matter, because as you fair the surface and then sand it, you really won't notice the difference in the slight difference in the shape. Now we have another variation. How do you deal with a natural edge? Now this bowl still needs sanding on the inside, so I'm not actually going to cut anything on the bottom here, but this will serve to show how things are done. Now in this case I collect small blocks like this, which are ideal to, maybe that block's too small for these jaws. Number of steps on this block. I come down to one that's convenient. There we are, about there. That's the great advantage of these longer jaws, is that they can reach up a bit of a tenon. Now in this case I just want to round over the end so that that bowl fits over. This is now a centre work piece, so the grain's running parallel to the lathe axis. Let's get it round, maybe take off that little sharp corner and round it over. Back with a non-slip cloth. Seem to have found some bigger bits. Goes in there. Put in my little bit of MDF again. Now this has actually gone oval. I think, yes, the whole thing's gone oval as it dried out. So I do actually need a new foot on this. I'm just going to true up the foot so when I put it back on the chuck it'll run true. And that will be sufficient for the moment. The whole point we're making here is that it's very easy to get a piece back on the lathe between centres, so you can take a tenon away or modify it. So we'll now look at actually taking a tenon away, and I've got a little square bowl here, and I want to shorten the whole thing. Well, I'm going to shorten the whole thing as an exercise. So just going to bring up the tail centre in what I hope will be pretty much the middle. Yep, that'll do. And I'm going to shorten, in fact I'm going to change the whole thing. So we'll take away those beads. 3/8 deep fluted bowl gouge. And we will just leave 2 beads, just for the sake of it. And I'd like a shorter base. Right, I can then sand or whatever I want to do. And then I might just take a teeny bit more out of that. The final bit, this is cross grain, so I've only got a very little bit to go, right on its side, and as I turn the lathe off I give it a little shove, and that takes it off pretty clean, and you can just do a little bit of hand sanding if you want any cleaner. That might be an improvement, it might not. Now if I want to remount that, I can actually grip it around one of these beads. And if I do that, there are going to be marks on the bead. So once I've done whatever I need to do, I can then re-chuck it again and take the marks off. So if I want to sand this sphere off, this ball, got a roughed out bowl, and there it's pretty well the right size, I think this, yeah, not very far off, and so I can just cut, take a little bit, just needs to be a little bit deeper in the bottom, somewhere in there. So I can sand that. Need something a bit heavier. And pop it back in and so on. Now you'd apply the same principle to any kind of enclosed form, a little vase or hollow form. So I don't do hollow forms generally, but we have here, what passes for one. Now normally I would, with a thicker one, I would just pop that over the chuck jaws or even the jaw shoulders. Gives you a bit more grip, and if you're over the jaw shoulders, then you've got the rim up against the chuck, which is really a pretty good grip. But if it's a very thin bowl, you need to put this into a hole and grip it around the maximum diameter. So another roughed out bowl here. Bowl gouge. Now this one, I think I'll feel happier doing this with dividers. Right on the limits here. I've got to go down about an inch. Needs to come out just about another 1/8 of an inch. 3/8 spindle gouge. Right, that time I need, I've got to take a bit more out down in there, and I'm beginning to push my luck on this particular bowl. We need a bit more further down too. This box elder is really quite tough. It's sounding quite thin around the corner there. When I come to turn this off, I'm going to be pretty lucky to get a bowl out of this, I think. Now, if I'm doing this kind of thing, and I know I'm going to be doing it, then I would have marked center, and that means I can then bring the tail center up and support it, which is about there, but I'm going to hope to hold it in. Yep. And then just in case it wants to come loose, keep a hand over the top. And go extremely gently. Now, I'm going to push this a little bit so it comes loose. Then you can see what happens. And so if you have a hand there, at least you can hang on to it. But of course it's safer if once you've got it to there to bring the tail center up and support it. And this is why this bowl isn't going to get completed. So the basic message is you don't really need bowl jaws or Longworth jaws or whatever other kind of jaws there are, with very basic equipment, with a small chuck or with a screw chuck. You can just use anything which you can true up and then pop a bowl over it. And look at this one now. If I can use this, will probably become a chuck. I can put that over there. Now that's going over the shoulders at the moment, and that means that if I wanted to remount that bowl, that will go over there very nicely with the tail center support. Then I can true that, in fact I will. And all I want to do on this is to get a foot on it. That was not calculated, so that's the genuine article. Just off a little bit. Right, so that foot is oval. It's about to be round. Now round, I'm going to true up the bottom. I'll be revisiting this later, and while I'm at it, I'm just going to skim this up. 3/8 bowl gouge. the 3/8 flute. Sounding awfully thin. But there will be enough in there to get a bowl out of it.